we're going to be talking about how you can improve your relationship with yourself. That is kind of the foundation to having any sort of relationship.
You need to understand what it means to have a relationship with yourself.
How do you actually do that? I think we're taught that it is selfish to spend time on ourselves.
The illusion of loving yourself, it's not actually self-love. It's based on, I think it's a habit that we're guilty of. That's something that we really need to emphasise on this podcast.
The most secure way to genuinely look after and love yourself is from...
I think that's really at the core of understanding yourself. We're saying the gym is a great way of building rapport with yourself. Why is that so?
Really realise until I started going to the gym. I think a big thing about it is...
Just setting up. It's very problematic that there's a mirror right there.
I know, I just want to see how I look. I like looking at myself.
Don't blame me. And that's the theme of today's episode.
We're
talk
passionate
about this a lot.
it,
Yeah. We are back with another episode.
And today we're going to be talking about how you can improve your relationship with yourself. I think this is something that should definitely be spoken about a lot, something that should be spent a lot of time and effort going into, because it will affect every area of your life, and that is kind of the foundation to having any sort of relationship with any other person, family, friends, romantically. This also sets the foundation for just the way you are, the way you go about things in daily life, and the way you behave.
Exactly that. And I think in order to understand how to improve your relationship with yourself, you need to understand what it means to have a relationship with yourself.
So how would you define that?
As recognising your own importance, so understanding your personal needs,
Okay.
and putting those first, because it's essential to do that. As you said, it feeds into every relationship around you. Within that as well, your needs cannot be overlooked, because if you don't have that strong foundation, then you can't really support other things in your life.
I think we do have a natural tendency to prioritise other people, because I think we're taught that it is selfish to spend time on ourselves. It's not always something that somebody else can maybe identify or observe. It's something that's very internal, and sometimes only you can realise how much you've maybe grown or worked on yourself. It's not always really obvious.
I think everything in this day and age especially, it's all focused on how things appear. If you think of social media, it's all about what are you putting out there to show other people.
What will other people think? It's almost as if we're living for the approval and acceptance of anybody that's not ourselves.
It's misconceived as self-worth. It's not really.
Yeah.
If you can always step back from that and come back to yourself, and you're constantly working on that and assessing and reassessing how you respond to stimuli and why that is, I think that's really at the core of understanding yourself and being able to then learn how to use the best parts of it and then focus on the areas where you can improve.
It's true, and that is a big reason why we decided to make this podcast an episode. It's such a prevalent topic, and it's something that you see in everyday life. If you can listen and understand this podcast and nail what we're saying, I think it can really not just improve your relationship with yourself, but improve your relationship with the people in your life.
Oftentimes self-love is seen as quite a selfish concept, when actually it's not, and it can't possibly be, because if we didn't have self-love, then we couldn't be selfless with it. So, Abby, why is self-love in fact not selfish?
I think it's important to build a relationship with yourself. It's really important to spend time working on and caring for all of your needs, not just your physical health. Obviously that is something you need to keep in check, but your mental well-being, your insecurities, your self-image, the way you look at yourself. I think you need to take care of those kind of things, because otherwise those needs that you've left undealt with, they will manifest onto other people. And this is because our brains, we simply can't suppress feelings or emotions without our subconscious putting it onto other people. A function that we have is to express emotion. The more that we resist that, the less control we have over it. And it's really worrying when you don't have control over the one thing in the entire world that you do have control over, which is yourself. And not only is that just worrying, it also can damage relationships that you have with other people, and that's because you'll become unpredictable and unstable.
This is a quote from Bridesmaids, actually. Oh, I love a quote. You're your own problem, essentially, but you're also your own solution.
I didn't know Bridesmaids got that deep.
It is a good film.
I haven't seen
really
that
like
in
it.
ages.
It's about friendship. It's just so nice.
I feel like I have watched it,
Yeah.
for like not for years.
Yeah, it's a good one for self-love and self-worth.
Is it?
The main character, she
Everybody.
goes to watch Bridesmaids. I really enjoy that film, and it's so fitting for what you're saying, really, about how you need to be able to support yourself, because nobody can fill those voids for you.
No, nobody, nothing. Everybody copes differently, and some coping mechanisms may be more obvious than others. Maybe something like isolating yourself from the people around you, that's also a coping mechanism, but that's something that maybe isn't as well understood or as obvious.
Yeah, for sure. But people will exhibit different signs of how they are or are not coping so well with their own self-image and self-worth. And yeah, it's important to speak to people and do what you can to understand them, I think. It will teach you a lot about yourself too. But for sure, nobody can pull you out of your own black hole. Yeah, it's ultimately up to you as an individual, or that person as an individual, to really keep in check their own self-worth. It comes from within the self.
Yeah.
How can that come from somebody else?
It can't. You know. And you can seek the validation and approval and acceptance of the people around you, but because it's such a temporary thing and it's something that's so fickle, it's never something that's stable or that really actually means anything. The most supported and secure way that you can protect your self-worth and genuinely look after and love yourself is from internalizing it. It's from internally believing that you are good enough, you are beautiful, you are worthy.
In order to do that, I think you do really need to have your own space, your own time to think about that.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to think about that when you're stuck in all the noise from everything around you. There's so much that we consume every day. It's quite hard to get away from it, and it's really easy to deter to what's being presented as normal.
Definitely.
You know, it can really get to a point where you like start invalidating your feelings.
Yeah. And that's not fair, and again, that is kind of where this slippery slope begins. I think the reason there is a stigma around self-love is because of self-superiority. So that's the idea that you love yourself, but it's almost as if you're superior to somebody else. So it's putting yourself up while simultaneously pushing other people down. Now that's where it's not great. That is the problem, not self-love.
Well, the reason that's a problem is because it's, again, an illusion of loving yourself. It's not actually self-love. It's based on comparison again.
Exactly.
There's no way you can feel happy by comparing yourself to others on a continuous basis.
Exactly.
And that's like your measure of your self-worth. That's really quite damaging.
Self-worth and self-love isn't expendable. Just because somebody else might be beautiful doesn't take away from yours, or just because somebody else might think highly of themselves doesn't take away from you.
Again, the world is kind of designed to get us to compete against each other a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Everything is in your face, and it's natural to want to compare yourself. It's very normal, but if it's a constant cycle of doing that, it's very unhealthy, because then you lose sight of what really matters to you as an individual person. So yeah, it's important to have that separation.
It does, and it stops you appreciating anything as well. It really takes away the act of gratitude, because then you're not really appreciative of anything that you may have, because you're too busy looking at what you don't have that somebody else might have. In order to love yourself, you need to be able to appreciate all the parts that make you you.
Yeah, uniqueness isn't really celebrated, I think, sometimes.
It's not at all.
There's kind of like a cookie cutter image of what makes somebody a worthy individual. Aspire to be like this person, you know, like idols, supermodels, or I'm trying to think, like pop stars. They're a big part of why people compare themselves, because you're only seeing that top 1%.
That's what you then measure yourself against, when all you should be measuring yourself against is a previous version of yourself. Just as long as you're doing better than you were yesterday, then you're doing well.
I think it's a habit that we're guilty of as well. I think that's something that we really need to emphasise on this podcast, is that it's really normal to compare yourself. It's really normal to not feel like you're on top of the world, or not even that, but like It's normal to feel like you don't have enough self-love. It's a journey, and I think no matter what happens, as long as you can always come back to that fundamentally, I think you'll always be alright. A lot of the time these experiences will break you and then build you up again. I always believe this as well. Like I don't particularly believe in God, but we can use God as an analogy here. God puts you in the same situation again and again and again until you learn.
I do believe that. I really believe that. The only way that you can learn is it requires time and energy put into you.
If your focus is to better yourself, your well-being, your stability, if that's what you want for your own life, you'll naturally attract those things the more you embody them. And this is so true of my life. People that are closest to me right now, I feel like really mirror those qualities.
Yeah. For you to get what's right for you, you need to let go of what isn't, and that requires work itself. You need to be able to sit and look at the things in your life, work out what serves you and what doesn't, and to stop clinging on to things that are maybe just comfortable. And that is all part of self-love, because it's doing what's best for you. And the sooner you can work out what isn't right for you and you let go of the things that aren't, you make way for the things that are.
That's put it so well.
Aww.
You know what I'm going to say. Just one of my many phrases.
Put yourself into perspective.
It's all about perspective.
So now that we've stated that it's really important to build a bond with yourself, the next question is, how do you actually do that?
I think it's really about sitting down and working out what matters the most to you. What you would choose to spend your time doing, what sacrifices you would need to make in order to make that happen. It's really echoing the point of what serves you and what doesn't. And that will chop and change as well as you grow and change.
So it does lead back to your original point of self-reflection.
Completely. Within self-reflection, you'll realise a lot of pent-up emotions you have. So it's about really being real with those, recognising those, and then releasing them in healthy ways. So something I really like to do is sit down and journal every morning. I find journaling to be very good for releasing these sort of pent-up emotions. I'm not then transferring those to a person. It's a piece of paper. And what is really important is to speak to people, of course. But you want to filter that so you're not just like lumping a whole load of crap onto somebody else.
It is a habit of bottling things up. It's almost like once you take the lid off, just everything spills out.
When you talk to someone else, oftentimes you're asking for that person to validate your feelings. And sometimes you need a second opinion with certain things, because to believe you're always right is wrong. You're never always going to
Unless you're me.
Unless you're me. But in all seriousness, every thought you have doesn't necessarily mean something. And sometimes it's good to check in with a friend or someone that you trust. And that perspective can like shape your own in a really good way. I know, I said
There
it.
it goes! The word's out!
That can shape your own thoughts in a really positive, productive way. However, when you're constantly offloading your insecurities onto somebody else, you're kind of asking for that person to validate you because you don't really validate yourself.
Definitely. And it instantly takes away from you, and you stop trusting yourself because you're too busy focusing on everybody else. A huge part of self-love is to trust yourself, to believe in yourself. A similar thing to what you said about how we have pent-up emotions and how we need that release. I think another good way of doing that is exercise. This can just mean any sort of physical activity. Things like boxing, things like martial arts, they're all so good because it's a thing called catharsis. It's essentially releasing your emotions through exercise. It's an innate need that us as mammals have. It's a very animalistic trait to have. A famous psychologist, I think, and his name's Peter Levine, and he studies animal psychology and relates it to humans. He's got some really good books. And essentially that's what he looked into. Say you're walking your dog in the park and it comes along another dog. What you'll find is afterwards your dog will start shaking. Like, you know when they like shake their head? It does that because what it's doing is releasing the trauma from its body. And that's what we do, but just through exercise or through a different way. But we're essentially doing the same thing. We're releasing all the trauma, which I found so interesting. And when you think about it, it makes so much sense because you always feel so much better after a workout.
Completely. Yeah.
And I think that's a huge reason why. So that's another really good thing that you probably should do to help build a better bond with yourself, is get a bit of physical activity in.
Part of exercising is the beauty in that you can do it by yourself. It's you that's fueling that, which relates to just spending time with yourself and how that's so beneficial for developing a sense of self-love and self-worth. Something that's really beneficial is meditation. That's, again, quiet time on your own. It shows a level of intent towards wanting to feel peaceful in that moment by yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I think spending time on your own, it really does show you that your time is precious. You are worthy of being on your own. You don't constantly need to be around other people, and your own company, you should be satisfied with it.
I think in order to really feel the benefits of what we've discussed, like exercise, meditation, or journaling, the key is to make it a habit. It's constantly in your daily routine. You're, again, establishing that foundation for yourself.
Yeah.
To always fall back upon, no matter what else is going on in life, because life's a chaos. You always have that, and that's completely independent. I think that communicates a lot about the kind of person you want to be and how you view yourself. So we're saying the gym is a great way of building rapport with yourself. Why is that so?
I think there's quite a few reasons, and it's something that I didn't really realise until I started going to the gym. I think a big thing about it is the idea of you going to the gym is you're committing to an idea of a future version of yourself. So you're showing up for yourself. It stops being about trying to look a certain way or trying to run a certain distance or trying to lift a certain amount of weight, and it just goes down to the hardcore fact that you are going to benefit yourself. It's not for anybody else, because it doesn't affect anybody else whether you go to the gym or not. So the idea that you're going to go to better a future version of yourself is so special, and is something that should never be ignored. So even if you made it to the gym today and you don't feel like you look any better or like you perform very well, you can still sit and think about the fact that you showed up and you did it because you were committing to the idea of improving yourself. Alongside that, the more you go to the gym, the more you start to understand the idea of delayed gratification, which is something society really brushes under the carpet. We're taught about instant gratification all the time from a young age. Everything is a quick fix. Everything should be at the click of your fingers. You see it on social media. You see it on all technology. You want something, you get it like that. Whether it's you want to text someone, you can message them instantly, listen to a song. Even as much as if you want to get something, you can buy it and get it by tomorrow. Everything is just instant.
Yeah, that becomes the expectation, right?
It does. And then we kind of have no patience or tolerance for anything that may take a little bit longer. And that's why so many people don't go to the gym, because it is too long of a process for them. But going to the gym is all about delayed gratification. It's about committing to something now, trusting the process and believing that you're going to have a good outcome from it somewhere down the line.
Completely. But the only way you can really believe that is by doing it, is by showing up and seeing how you make those gradual steps towards your progress.
As you start this delayed gratification, along the way you start to develop traits that you might not even realise. Things like becoming more patient, more disciplined, more committed, more ambitious.
It's something that isn't easily reversible, because once progress is made, it's there. You can't discredit that, because you're the only one capable of getting those results. Once you have those results, you've made that progress, you realise what it takes to keep that up. So naturally you are giving to yourself. You're eating, you're bettering your sleep routine, you're bettering your hydration, your water intake, everything that adds to you making progress in the gym. You're looking at your workouts with more detail, you're going with a friend, you're trying to keep yourself accountable through any means that you can. It completely tailors your life, and before you know it, self-love is evident always.
Everything that you said I think is bang on. And as we always say, and we even said earlier on, you attract who you are, and you align with things that you have common ground with. And I think the more you develop those traits, the more you're going to attract people with similar traits. And that's something I can say for myself for sure. I've had a whole people glow up in my life, to be completely honest. If I ever look at all the people I was around before to now, no disregard, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody that I was around, but oh my god, if I had a glow up. In terms of everybody that I spend my time with now, they are so much more like me, and they help me become the best version I can, and you are the best example I can use. And I wouldn't have attracted you or been around you, I don't believe, if I didn't have those traits. Because again, they're traits that you mirror.
It's true. Like, we have so much in common. Our conversations, like the big reason why we started a podcast was because of how much pride we have shared in our conversations.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for listening to this episode. We hope you've enjoyed and have taken something from it.
As always, we really appreciate all the love and support.
If you could do us the favour of liking, following and subscribing to our content, it would mean the world to us. It does not go unnoticed. You have been listening to Gains and Gossip.